Are buyers finally getting their leverage back, or are agents still negotiating like every listing has 12 offers waiting outside? There are more signs of negotiating room than we've seen in a while. National median listing prices were down 2.5% year over year in June, and 18.8% of active listings had received a price reduction. Buyers are seeing more homes where the seller has already responded to the market. Houston has its own version of that shift. Single-family inventory reached 5.2 months in June, while days on market moved from 50 to 52. Pending sales were up 12.3%, so buyers have more choices inside a market that's still producing activity. Those numbers can create an opportunity. They don't write the offer for you. One neighborhood may have aging inventory while the best homes 3 streets over are moving in a weekend. The leverage has to be measured at the property level. Before we build the workflow, hit like, subscribe, and tell us in the comments where buyers are getting more room in your market. I'd give every serious property the same 5-stage review. Start with the market and property brief. Prepare the listing side call. Confirm the buyer's priorities. Build the offer scenarios. Then use the same file when a counteroffer or inspection result changes the conversation. The workflow gives the agent a familiar process for every home. The data, personalities, and terms will change from transaction to transaction. The review checkpoints stay in place, which makes the work easier to repeat across a busy pipeline or an entire team. Stage 1 is the market and property brief. Gather current local data, the listing history, relevant competition, property condition notes, and any showing information you can verify. Add what you know about the buyer's priorities, then remove names and private details before using an AI tool. Keep a source field beside the major facts. A market number should point back to the report. Listing details should trace to the MLS, disclosures, or another reliable record. Notes from a conversation should include who provided the information and when it was shared. Once that information is together, I'd save a master prompt and run it every time a buyer becomes serious about a property. Act as my buyer negotiation preparation assistant. I'll provide anonymized information about the local market, the property, its listing history, nearby competition, observed condition, buyer priorities, and information the listing side is authorized to share. Organize it into verified leverage signals, missing information, open assumptions, and questions I should answer before discussing an offer with the buyer. Treat only confirmed information as fact. The output becomes a working brief. It may flag that the listing has aged longer than similar homes, that the price has already moved, or that competing inventory gives the buyer several acceptable choices. It may also reveal that you don't know enough yet about current activity or seller timing. That separation keeps an assumption from quietly becoming the foundation of the negotiation. The brief shows what you can discuss confidently with the buyer and what needs another conversation first. Stage 2 is the listing side call. The goal is to prepare a few calm questions that fill the gaps in the brief. You're trying to understand the transaction, current activity, and any seller preferences the listing agent is authorized to discuss. I'd feed the unanswered items back into the same AI workspace and ask for a concise call sheet. Using the anonymized property brief, prepare 6 calm and professional questions for the listing agent. Focus on current activity, prior contract history, seller timing, preferred closing structure, property feedback, and information the seller has authorized the agent to discuss. Keep each question concise. Keep personal information and protected characteristics outside the strategy. The call may clarify that the seller prefers a certain closing window, has already relocated, experienced a previous contract issue, or received stronger activity over the weekend. Record what was actually said, attach the date, and refresh the property brief. Stay inside the information the listing side can appropriately share. Seller instructions, confidentiality, fair housing boundaries, and professional judgment belong in the workflow from the beginning. The AI prompt can support the structure. The agent remains responsible for the conversation. Stage 3 is the buyer priority map. Before drafting terms, get clear on what the buyer wants this offer to accomplish. Price may lead the conversation, cash at closing, monthly payment, inspection protection, timing, or a particular repair may carry more weight for this buyer. Ask the buyer to rank their priorities before they see a proposed strategy. That conversation can uncover a lot. Someone who keeps asking for the lowest price may be more concerned about preserving cash. Another buyer may willingly pay more for a closing date that fits a lease or job transition. After the conversation, I'd use AI to organize the notes and reflect the buyer's priorities back for confirmation. Review these anonymized buyer notes and identify the buyer's 3 highest priorities: areas of flexibility, unresolved concerns, and firm stopping points. Show the evidence from the notes behind each interpretation. Ask me to confirm or correct the summary before creating an offer planning worksheet. AI may surface a pattern the agent missed. The buyer then confirms it, corrects it, or explains that their priorities changed after seeing the property. The final map should reflect the buyer's current instructions in language they recognize as their own. The finished worksheet should capture the main objective, flexible terms, non-negotiables, opening request, fallback, and stopping point. That gives the buyer and agent a shared reference before the first offer goes out. Stage 4 is the offer scenario builder. Financing questions need current figures from the lender. Freddie Mac's national average for a 30-year fixed mortgage was 6.55% on July 16th, and that average changes weekly. The buyer's qualifications, taxes, insurance, association fees, and loan program will determine the numbers that apply to them. Ask the lender to model the options the buyer is seriously considering. A seller credit may affect cash needed at closing or the estimated payment differently from the same amount removed from the price. Builder incentives may create another scenario. The lender provides the approved figures, and those figures become part of the brief. Once the lender's scenarios are ready, the same workspace can organize the offer paths for the buyer. Using the lender-approved figures, the verified property brief, and the buyer's confirmed priority map, organize 3 possible offer structures. For each structure, show the opening terms, practical effect on the buyer, alignment with known seller priorities, areas of buyer flexibility, and unresolved questions. Clearly mark every item requiring lender, broker, legal, title, insurance, or contract review. The buyer now has a few coherent paths to consider. One scenario may preserve more cash, another may emphasize price, a third may use timing, or another term that fits a known seller preference. Each option should trace directly back to the buyer's confirmed priorities and the verified property information. Keep the client presentation clean. Show the supporting evidence, the opening request, the terms carrying the most weight, and the decisions that may follow. A short, calm review before submission gives the buyer a reference point when the seller responds. Save the scenario the buyer selects. Include the date, any changes they requested, and the professionals consulted. That decision record becomes useful when coverage is needed. A team lead reviews the file, or the seller sends back a counteroffer. Stage 5 begins when new information enters the file. A counteroffer may change price, timing, credits, possession, and other terms at once. The buyer needs a clear summary of what moved and which decisions now require their attention. I'd run the comparison through another save prompt before the buyer call. Compare the seller's counteroffer with the buyer's confirmed priorities, selected offer strategy, and stopping points. Summarize what changed, what remained aligned, which items need clarification, and the decisions the buyer now has to make. Preserve all deadlines, create a one-page discussion brief, and identify the professionals who need to review specific terms. The client conversation can begin with the handful of decisions that need an answer. The longer document has already been organized into a usable agenda. The buyer can see how the counter affects the priorities they confirmed earlier and which questions need professional review. Inspection fits into the same decision stage. Bring in the inspector's report, any qualified contractor estimates, relevant lender or insurance requirements, the contract deadlines, and the buyer's original priorities. Remove identifying information before using an AI tool. AI can help organize the material after the appropriate professionals have provided their findings and estimates. Using these anonymized inspection notes and professional estimates, create a buyer discussion brief organized around material impact, near-term planning, unresolved professional questions, contractual deadlines, and possible resolution paths. Keep the buyer's confirmed priorities visible. Attribute every technical conclusion and cost estimate to the qualified professional who provided it. The brief gives the buyer a cleaner way to process a long report. They can see which findings affect their comfort with the home, which questions remain with contractors or other specialists, and how much time the contract gives them to make a decision. Here's how the full workflow might play out. A home has been listed for several weeks and has already received a price adjustment. Nearby competition gives the buyer a few acceptable options. The first brief identifies those signals and flags current activity and seller timing as open questions. The listing side call confirms a preferred closing window and stronger activity over the weekend. The buyer priority map shows that preserving cash carries more weight than reaching the lowest possible price. The lender supplies approved scenarios, and the offer builder organizes those figures into a few paths the buyer can evaluate. The buyer selects an approach that supports their cash needs and works with the seller's timing. When the seller counters, the decision brief shows exactly what changed and how the revised terms affect the buyer's original priority. If the listing receives new activity, update the source field and run the relevant part of the workflow again. The file evolves as the transaction evolves. The agent and buyer keep working from the latest verified information. This system can live inside a CRM transaction platform, shared drive, AI project, or a well-organized folder. Give every property the same naming structure, saved prompts, source fields, and review checkpoints. A team can add approval steps based on local practice and brokerage policy. Improve the master template after each transaction. Save a useful question that came up. Remove a field nobody touched. Add a checkpoint when the team nearly missed something. Over time, the workflow begins to reflect the agent's real experience and the team's actual standards. Human review belongs at every stage. Verify the market data, confirm the listing details, record conversations accurately, keep the buyer's instructions visible, bring qualified professionals into financing, contracts, title, insurance, inspections, repairs, taxes, and legal questions. The Real Edge Network's monthly market update resources can provide current context for the front end of the workflow, and its presentation library can help agents turn the finished strategy into a clearer client conversation. Those materials can reduce the time spent rebuilding the structure for every appointment. The broader Real Edge Network Resource Center can also support agents who decide to standardize the process across a team or add more structure around accepted offers. The resource becomes relevant when it answers a pressure the agent has already identified in the workflow. These are the kinds of operating conversations we keep having inside the Real Edge Network. How do you turn a market shift into a repeatable process? How do you help buyers make calm decisions? How do you give agents a structure that gets stronger after every transaction? Here's the action step. Choose one active buyer and one property they're seriously considering. Build the market and property brief. Prepare the listing side questions. Confirm the buyer's priorities. Bring the lender into the scenarios. Save the final decision record and keep using the same file as new information arrives. Buyer leverage is showing up in more situations. A repeatable AI workflow helps the agent recognize the evidence, organize the strategy, and guide the buyer through each decision with a clear head. The negotiation begins long before anyone opens the offer form. If this helped, hit like, subscribe, and tell us in the comments which part of the workflow you'd build first. We'll include the Real Edge Network resources mentioned below for anyone who wants to explore them. I'll see you on the next one.